Always true.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to be?
Julius Malema is never far from the spotlight. In 2012, his aggressive and divisive brand of rhetoric led to his expulsion from South Africa's ruling African National Congress. As head of the influential ANC Youth League, he'd earlier helped Jacob Zuma become president. Many observers wrote him off. But he re-emerged quickly as head of a new party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, becoming a member of parliament in 2014. Their fight, Malema says, is against white-held capital and the irritant, as he now describes him, that is Jacob Zuma. His economic policies, including nationalisation of industry and expropriation without compensation, play well on the streets and badly in company boardrooms. A controversial and often contradictory figure, Malema is a confirmed capitalist himself, known for expensive tastes, while much less is known about the source of his wealth. He's been accused of corruption, convicted of hate speech, yet to his supporters he is a revolutionary, proceeding where the ANC has failed to reduce inequality, redistribute wealth, and even, if necessary, to defend their rights by force. Today, Talk to Al Jazeera speaks to Julius Malema in Johannesburg. Julius Malema, thank you for speaking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you for having me.
You were a young, up-and-coming, influential figure in the ANC as leader of the Youth League. You in part propelled Jacob Zuma to power in 2009. You said at the time that you would be prepared to fight and die for him. Then perhaps the party found your rhetoric a bit embarrassing. I think towards the end you called for the overthrow of the Botswana government, and they kicked you out. Do you feel bitter about the way you were treated?
Not at all. I think that everything happens for a reason in politics. It was a time for us to exit the ANC and find an alternative voice, because naturally liberation movements in power, they don't stay for too long. So they self-destruct, and we are happy that we're not part of that era where the ANC was self-destructing and becoming a party of the liberation which is unable to adjust to new conditions.
And presumably still self-destructing in your view?
It's going to die a natural death. It is bound to happen. They want to create an impression that we are owing them for the rest of our life. So there is a completely new generation.
And it's that new generation, of course, that you are appealing to. What has emerged is your party, the Economic Freedom Fighters. You, its commander-in-chief, a revolutionary figure, military-styled, uniformed. You're waging a war against Zuma and the ANC. I wonder how far are you prepared to go to get rid of Zuma? Would you tell your supporters now to fight and die for that?
No, we are not waged in a war against Zuma and the ANC. We are waged in a war against white monopoly capital. Zuma is not our enemy. The ANC is not our enemy. They are standing on our way to crushing white monopoly capital, which has stolen our land, which controls the wealth of our country. And as we are in the process of crushing the white monopoly capital, there will be some of these irritations that we have to deal with. And Zuma represents such an irritation. The ANC represents such an irritation.
In 2014, you threatened to make the Gauteng province ungovernable, the province in which Johannesburg sits. We will fight, you said. We have the capability to mobilize our people and fight physically. That's not befitting of a government in waiting, is it?
We know for a fact that Gauteng ANC rigged elections here. We know for a fact that they lost Johannesburg, they lost Gauteng, and but we still accepted. But they must know that we're not going to do that this year. We're not going to accept. Part of your revolutionary duty is to fight. And we're not ashamed. If the need arises for us to take up arms and fight, we'll fight. This regime must respond peacefully to our demands, must respond constitutionally to our demands. And if they are going to respond violently, like they did in the township of Alexandra, just outside Johannesburg, when people said these results do not reflect the outcome of our votes. They send the army to go and intimidate our people. We're not going to stand back. Zuma is not going to use the army to intimidate us. We're not scared of the army. We're not scared to fight. We'll fight.
Lest we find ourselves charged with misinterpreting your words, when you say you are willing to take up arms, that's what you said?
Literally. Literally.
Against the government?
Yeah. Literally. I mean it literally. We were not scared. We're not going to have a government that disrespects the
And on what basis, what are the circumstances in which you can imagine
if they respond
up
violently, if they respond violently to our peaceful protest?
You envisage reacting in self-defense?
We are a very peaceful organization.
Yes.
We fight our battles through peaceful means, through the courts, through parliament, through mass mobilization. We do that peacefully. But at times, government gets tempted to respond to such with violence.
Yeah.
They beat us up in parliament.
There's a long history of
and
that. In this
they
country,
send soldiers to places like Alexander where people are protesting and will run out of patience very soon. And will remove this government through a barrel of a gun.
Tell me a little bit more about the policies of the EFF to bring about this defeat of white monopoly capital.
Well, we are representing nationalization of mines. We believe that the state must own the mines and use the proceeds from the mines to finance the social program of government. We are for expropriation of land without compensation because the land was taken by force and through committing of black genocide. We are for free, quality education, healthcare, and big and spacious houses. We are an anti-corruption organization which believes that those who are elected to represent our people should be held accountable. We want to build state capacity to destroy the tendering system which has corrupted South Africa. Those are amongst the key 7 cardinal pillars of the EFF.
It's a sort of version of communism, isn't it? Something like that?
No, it's socialism. We are unashamedly a socialist organization.
It doesn't have a great record of success, this form of government in history, or really much of a record of success at all, does it?
It does. China is one example of the success of a socialist state. Cuba is one of the example of the success of a communist state. And they did very well under very difficult conditions of economic embargo imposed on them by America. You can imagine that if Cuba was allowed to trade with anyone they wished to trade with, they would have done far much better.
I've heard more than one economist, and one reads many things about economists, speaking with concern, saying that if your economic agenda, the agenda of the EFF, were to be implemented in this country, it would become an economic basket case overnight. Already the IMF has just downgraded the 2016 GDP forecast for this country, 0.6%. That's very, very small indeed. The ratings agencies are on the verge of downgrading South Africa's bond status to junk. I mean, is this the right time to be making these sorts of pronouncements? Is that responsible, do you think?
They are not downgraded under a socialist state. They are downgraded under a capitalist state. Capitalism is failing. That's why the IMF, the World Bank, and rating agencies are downgrading a capitalist economy. So you cannot use that to want to argue that socialism cannot succeed in South Africa.
So you don't think
we are
being
at a point
frozen out of international markets, putting off international investors is a problem?
We are at a point when alternative should be introduced, because that which you are pointing at, trying to vulgarize socialism, is clear evidence of a failure of a capitalist system.
Socialism, but what I'm suggesting is
don't
that
personalize things. Me and you are having a conversation, we are quoting. You're saying I'm not talking about you. You are quoting economists.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that which you are quoting, because it's you who's making the quote, that which you are quoting is a clear evidence of a capitalist system failing. South Africa is under capitalism.
But what you are suggesting by saying this is that South Africa can exist perfectly well outside of the international structures of finance, outside of international investment. You don't need it here. If you put them all off, you'll be just fine.
Who said under socialist state there's no foreign investment? Because there is a foreign
I'm
investment.
suggesting they might not want to put their money here if they think that there is expropriation without compensation, if they think that their businesses will be nationalized.
No, there will be a direct foreign investment in South Africa, because direct foreign investment, it depends on the stability of a country.
How do you reassure the foreign investors?
No, you must give me a chance to speak. Unless you want to have this interview with yourself, then we can give you a chance to speak alone.
Okay.
Because you're asking me questions, I'm responding to them, and that's the whole intention of this conversation. So we are going to ensure that we take control of our own economy. We're going to ensure that we take control of our own land, and those who want to invest in our country, they're going to do so through our own terms. Their businesses will be safe for as long as they will help to grow the economy of South Africa. If they want a piece of land, they will get that piece of land, but they will not own it. They will lease that piece of land for whatever years they so require to lease the piece of land, as long as that is aiming at creating jobs and growing the South African economy. And there will be a stable government. Their investment will be 100% protected. And there is no blood in South Africa. There is no civil war in South Africa. It's just a change of political system.
Local elections are coming up shortly in just a few months' time. Will you do better, do you think, in these local elections than the 6% you got in the 2014 general election?
We got 6% when we were less than a year old. And I think that and we are going to be turning 3 years now. So every year represents 6 years. So the first year we got, every year represents 6% rather. The first year we got 6%, then there is another year, and then this is the third year, so we must get 6% 3 times.
That 6% per annum calculus of yours would put you by 2019, the general election, pretty much in a position to govern the country. Is that what you expect?
Absolutely. That's what we want.
The next general election?
We want to take this country by 2019. And if we don't take this country by 2019, we must be an official opposition with a clear direction of taking over power, because we said from the beginning we are a government in waiting.
Do you envisage the need for partners? Can you see yourself in coalition with the Democratic Alliance?
Absolutely. We can work with the DA, we can work with the UDM, we can work with anyone who represents clean governance, anyone who wants to restore the dignity of black people. We are not going to work with any party, particularly the DA. It will have to outline to us how is it going to empower, in partnership with us, the black nation, which is still under an economic oppression, is still under an economic apartheid. We're not going to partner with anyone who wants to bring white dominance and control through a back door. So the DA will have to outline itself as to how do we ensure that we take our people out of the shacks? How do we make sure that the black middle class gets paid the same salary with white counterparts for the same job? Because that is not the case today. And if the DA doesn't outline that, we'll not be in any partnership with them. We want a party that is ready to empower the black nation.
Do you have anything positive at all to say to the whites of this country, the 10% that makes up the white population?
Well, they are part of South Africa. This is their country, and many of them have demonstrated their love for this country. Many of them want to contribute to the positive development of this country.
When we they're all racists, for instance.
I've never said that. I've never said that. Of course, if you were to refer me to a specific report so that I can respond to a specific article, I don't know of such an article. All I said is that we want a country where we're all equal. My fighting for black people does not mean the oppression of white people. I'm fighting to liberate black people so that they can be at the same level with white people.
Well, what about
and we don't see each other as white and black, but we see each other as human beings.
What about the language of incitement then? Where does that fit into that paradigm? Because as you said this weekend, you said whites are the real enemy. They've stolen the land, we'll steal it back. You said also that black people, just a few days ago, should have more babies so that they can keep up their majority over the white people. This is not inclusive language, is it?
No. The people who took our land is white people. When we say we want our land. We don't want it from the sky. We want it from white people. So that's why we're saying we want our land from them. They've taken our land, and they've taken our land through a black genocide. Secondly, when I say black people must reproduce for sustainability of our ideas, it doesn't mean white people must not reproduce. If they want to reproduce, they are free to do that. All I'm saying to our people is that we are fighting for economic freedom. And for these ideas to be sustainable, we have to reproduce ourselves. Because reproduction of ourselves means reproduction of our ideas. We are guaranteed longevity. We are guaranteed the legacy of what we are fighting about.
So we travelled around the country, we spoke to young people around the country about their view of South Africa now, their view of the future, and we've just clipped up 2 of them who had specific things to say about you and the EFF. Here's what they thought of your party. If you just press play there, you can have a listen.
I think they're a double-edged sword, really. So in my eyes, they could be good for South Africa going forward, or they could be even worse than the ANC or the apartheid government.
Why?
They give off too much fear. They instill fear into other people.
They're divisive.
Instead of actually coming across as being warm and open, having like open arms and like being able to embrace everyone of every color and every walk of life.
I don't think Julius Malema will make a great leader. He's a very good leader, you know, the way he speaks, the way he does things, but the way of approach, the way he does things, they are so, I don't know which way to explain it, but for a leader, some of the things like that, you cannot do them.
The insults,
the provokes and everything. And imagine having a leader like that who's leading the whole country. He will just say things that will drive people out, that will drive the investors out of the country. And then our country will be like, sorry to make this example, but will be like Zimbabwe one day. And this is what we don't want something like that to happen in this country. We want everyone to be accommodated, everyone, black and white, investors, every part of people.
What are your thoughts? How do you respond?
It depends on who's asking questions. When they see a white person asking questions, they want to be nice to you, and they want to appear like they are well balanced. You can hear they are struggling in their articulation because in front of them is a different type of a person. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is that you are asking them leading questions. The man tries to explain for himself what are the problems about Julius Malema, and you come in and say the insults, and then he follows you like that. You are leading him. So that's not genuine. I mean,
do you dismiss these concerns then?
No,
they're not real?
I don't dismiss them. But if you present that as if some sort of a quick research you went around making, I first look at who's asking the question. How are the questions posed to the respondent? Therefore, I will see if this is genuine or not.
So essentially you're dismissing it.
So I think that they are finding themselves in a very difficult situation. If we're to find their peer, a person who appears like he comes from the same condition and background with them, and allow them to have that conversation with that person without patronizing that person, they will express themselves. They say themselves on their own, we agree with him, he says the right things, we are the most oppressed people, and all those type of things. And then quickly they remember that, this person who is interviewing us, we must not be offensive
quite
to that person.
They said they didn't think you'd make a great leader. They said you might scare off foreign investors, and they worried that this country will end up like Zimbabwe. I didn't prompt them to say
I accept that. They have a right to make that observation. But remember that I have to look at the totality of the whole picture for me to make an informed a conclusion about it.
You publicly held up the Constitution and said it was the EFF's Bible.
Absolutely, all of us must live by the Constitution.
Your economic program would seem to be, parts of it, expropriation without compensation, the nationalization of company shares, in breach of that Constitution.
Our Constitution allows expropriation.
Not without compensation.
But it doesn't say with compensation.
Well, it does.
It's a-
Section 25 of the Constitution, no one may be deprived of property except in terms of law. Law may not arbitrarily deprive people of property. Property may be expropriated with just and equitable compensation, mutually agreed or determined by the court.
Yes, we need to go to the Constitutional Court and stretch that constitutional clause, because there are areas where there is clear evidence that this land was taken by force from rightful people, and parties who are involved in this matter, they both agree that the land was unfairly taken from the people. Why compensate such a land? So we can go to the Constitutional Court and get such a declaratory order. And
In certain cases on the merits, but it doesn't allow you to have a sweeping economic program based on expropriation without compensation.
No. There, when you quote that constitution, it speaks about specific cases that if it happens, there must be justifiable, acceptable compensation. And I'm stretching it further, and I'm saying to you, there could be instances where we expropriate without compensation in the same constitution. And secondly, that if the Constitutional Court makes a declaration that we have no such power, we can amend the Constitution, because our Constitution allows for amendment, and that must be done through 2/3 majority. And by doing that, for you to get 2/3 majority, you have to convince a population that this is a right direction.
You routinely dismiss questions about your wealth. How did you make your money?
Which one?
You don't have any?
My personal money? No, everyone knows about my money. You might not know, but everyone in South Africa, my money was in the news, my finances were in the newspapers.
Well, who paid for the who paid for the cars? Who pays for the watches? Who pays for the clothing?
All of that was declared in public. One is that the house I was building in Sandton was not built by me. It was a house that was built by a group of comrades. It was not an individual house. It was not my house, although the bond, it was in my name. It was a collective decision. And then the cars, let's talk about the Range Rover I used to drive. The owner of the Range Rover, he has passed away. He has since passed away. May his soul rest in peace. But when he was still alive, he went to the papers and said, this is my car. I borrowed it to him. I treat him like my son. I'm supporting him. I believe in his ideas. So all of that.
What about the watches, the clothing, the designer clothing?
no,
These
clothes-
are items of
the
conspicuous consumption
the
and
clothes are
wealth.
mine. I was working, I bought them.
I don't mean what you're wearing now. I mean what you are very famous for wearing in the
No, I
past.
was not going to walk naked. Even those clothes were mine.
Huge symbols of conspicuous
No,
wealth.
there's no
Thousands
conspicuous
of dollars
thing.
worth of watches and
You are
jewelry.
creating sensationalism.
No, I'm not.
There's no such thing
No,
as
I'm not.
thousands of
These
dollars.
are well documented.
It's thousands of rands. So rands and dollars are two different things. So you're being sensational because there's never been anyone who quantified if those clothes and watches are thousands of dollars. So you can't just throw and abuse this platform like that. So I used to wear my clothes the same way I'm wearing these ones. The difference was that I was presentable, and people confused a person who's presentable to be a person who's wearing expensive clothes. Some of the watches that I was wearing, I was given by comrades who I was very close with in the ANC. I've never bought a watch.
Wealthy comrades.
They are rich. In the ANC, they are rich people. They are rich black people.
And these were just gifts.
And they gave them to me because, you know, when you are a president of the Youth League, you got all sort of well-wishers.
And influence.
I don't have any influence. When you are a president of the Youth League, you don't have any influence. You are not in government. You don't have any influence. You are just a political figure who mobilizes the youth behind the vision of the ANC. That's the primary role. So you don't have any role that says you dish out tenders or you dish out businesses to anyone. There's no such a thing. So well-wishers are there. There are people who subscribe to our ideas and they don't want to see you fail. So I've never dressed more expensive things than what you appear to be dressing yourself. I've never been conspicuous like you, like the way you are now. So there's never been such a thing in my life.
Okay, touche. Good point. We're going to wrap it up now.
Sure.
Will you make a good president of this country one day, do you think?
I don't have ambition of becoming a president. My ambition is to make the EFF a government of South Africa. And as to who becomes the president, the EFF will make that choice. I'm not into this thing for myself. I'm into this thing to put a party that has got the interest of black people at heart in power. Once it's in
that's
power,
not what I asked.
we're happy.
Would you make a good president? Julius Malema.
You be the judge.
Well, we'll only know afterwards, won't we?
You be the judge if I can make a good president. But like I said, that's not my ambition. That's why I'm not even preoccupied with answering that question in myself, whether I will make a good president or not, because I've got no such ambition. My ambition is to put a responsible party in power.
Julius Malema, thank you for speaking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.